Coming up, LinkedIn goes IPO and impresses a lot of people, but is it going to set a precedent for the industry? And in sad news, Blippy goes bye-bye because nobody really wants to be social about credit card purchases. Groupon and Foursquare might be teaming up. And Namesake, have you heard of it? I say it's a Twitter Quora hybrid. What will you say? And more importantly, will you use it? All that and more coming up on The Social Hour.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for the Social Hour is brought to you by Cashfly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is The Social Hour, Episode 9 with Sarah Lane and Amber MacArthur, recorded Monday, May 23rd, 2011. This episode of The Social Hour is brought to you by Squarespace.com, the fast and easy way to create a high-quality website or blog. For a free 14-day trial, go to squarespace.com/socialhour and be sure to check out their annual plans for savings of up to 20% off. And by Netflix. Watch thousands of TV episodes and movies streamed to your PC, Mac, or TV instantly. Plus, get DVDs by mail in about one business day. For your free 30-day trial, go to netflix.com/twit. And by audible.com. To download a free audiobook of your choice, go to audiblepodcast.com/socialhour. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Social Hour in Petaluma, California. I'm Sarah Lane.
And in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, I'm Amber MacArthur.
Hey Amber, how are you?
I'm very good. As we were just talking about, I just got in from Chicago,
Yeah.
One of my favorite cities. Have you spent time there before, Sarah?
I love Chicago. And I haven't spent time in Chicago in years, really, because I don't know, I just had a bunch of reasons to go there. And now it just hasn't happened in a while. But there was a time where I had been there a few times at various seasons throughout the year. So, I mean, I've seen it at its coldest. I've been there in the summer where it's sweltering hot and humid, and some really nice, fall days. And it's like, I just love it. There's something about Chicago that's very unique to me and friendly, and there's just a lot going on, and it's like no other city, really.
Yeah, it's really great. And I got to meet Jason Fried from 37 Signals, which was a real treat for me. I followed him for many years, and we've interviewed him on the show before. And he's just as nice in person as he appears to be online, and a big fan of all the work that he's done and, his books like Getting Real. And they just opened a beautiful office space in downtown Chicago. So had a great tour of that. And it was fun just to, finally meet someone, just like I'll meet you, Sarah.
I know. When you come in, when you're going to visit us in mid-June?
Yes, mid-June. I actually just got my ticket. I can't remember off the top of my head when exactly I'm flying in, but I booked it. So I fly into San Francisco in the morning, and then I'm going to come out to see you guys. So I'll give you notice this week and make sure that you're around. I mean, I'm excited to see Leo, but mostly excited to meet you and Eileen in person.
I know. It's so true. We are very excited as well. It'll be fun. I hope it doesn't change our wonderful dynamic, though, Maybe we'll jinx ourselves.
You can't ruin this, Sarah.
Now we've met. It's so awkward.
Yeah, exactly.
I've seen you. I've hugged you. But I actually, the last time we talked about this, I was like, we'll definitely be in the studio by the time you're here. We will definitely be able to take a tour of the studio. Whether we're shooting shows in the studio, I'm not sure. It's just a big undertaking. You know how construction gets.
It's a lot of work.
But in any case, you'll certainly be able to see it, and there's been a lot of progress made. But as far as the social stuff, which is, of course, what we talk about on the Social Hour, some of the big news last week, Amber, it happened after our last show, so we didn't talk about it last Monday. But I think it went down, was it Thursday, where LinkedIn finally went public?
I know. It's amazing. And obviously making headlines all over the place. I mean, LinkedIn for me is still one of those sites that I'm glad that I'm there, but I don't really do anything on it. However, I realized just from talking to people how important it is to a lot of people as far as just networking, and if they lose a job, finding a job, and those type of things as well.
Yeah, we were talking about it on TNT last week, and my point was, wow, I mean, it wasn't just the fact that LinkedIn went public that was the big story. It was that it went public and its share price skyrocketed, and it was like, wow, they started off offering shares at $45 a share, and at one point it had peaked to over 100. today I just wanted to see how the share price was doing. It's like, it's definitely down. I think it's in the 80s, at least when I last checked, which is obviously understandable. You figure when a service IPOs, like something like LinkedIn, which has been around a long time, and, LinkedIn isn't brand new. They have an established base and everything. But for the most part, people were kind of like, oh, this is going to be the new wave of tech IPOs, and we're definitely in a bubble now, because looked at LinkedIn's price. And my whole thing was, I'm with you. It's like, I go to LinkedIn not every day, not even once a week, when I change jobs, or if I have something that I feel like I should update on my resume, because that's really kind of just where my online resume lives. I'll check in, just make sure everything's updated, and just kind of look at my objective every once in a while, maybe reword some stuff. But I wonder how I'm wondering if people are actually going there every day and using it as their primary social network, because they do allow you to update your status, similar to Facebook, and import tweets and things like that. Maybe it's just not us.
People I know, I think there's a lot of people who are just, not that they're anti-social networking, but maybe they aren't so into Facebook. They see it as a place that's kind of frivolous as far as how you spend time there. And for LinkedIn has just become this kind of safe networking tool, and it's a very conservative space in some ways, and they're very comfortable there, because I do know a few people who avoid Twitter, Facebook, but they are on LinkedIn. So there are a lot of those people, I think, that they use it just for their professional lives. And it's kind of interesting. I just posted a question last week on Twitter in terms of how you separate your personal and professional life online, and a lot of people that had tweeted back to me had said, well, basically I connect with my professional friends on LinkedIn and my personal friends on Facebook. And I think, Sarah, we live in kind of a different world where we share so much online that there's no real division.
Well, and also, professional and personal friends, for me, there's a lot of overlap there.
Me too. Yeah,
they're not
me too.
two different
totally
worlds by far. There's some friends who I don't work with, and we're in very different industries, but they're really just on a personal level. But it would be hard to fragment things for me that way. But LinkedIn is great, and we had it was Randall Bennett, who was a guest on Tech News Today last week, who said it's not really so much about whether or not LinkedIn is this kind of service that you're going back to every day. They have a lot of registered users, but they're making money. They sell services. A lot of businesses use those services to post job listings or to send, they have like the in-mail services where I can send you a message from within LinkedIn, and that stuff costs money. And it doesn't really matter if every single person uses that feature. I don't, but they're doing well for themselves. They have a proven business model. So it'll be interesting to see how, are all the founders going to, share all their stocks in 30 days when they can, or sell them rather. It's hard to say. It is interesting though. I'm happy for the folks behind LinkedIn, because obviously they had at least a really good initial public offering. And, it's funny, there are other sites. There's this Russian internet search company. It's called Yandex. I had not heard of it before today, but it got a little bit of publicity, at least in the IPO sort of circle talk, because it's planning to IPO on May 24th. So, gosh, that's tomorrow, isn't it? And they've now, or they're going to tell people what the price is going to IPO for on May 24th. And they've already raised the price. It was going to be 20, and now it's like, well, look at LinkedIn.
Crazy.
They did really well, and we have a proven business model too. Let's start at 25, and then our value is that much higher. So it's kind of like, you see, all these people are watching behind the scenes saying, well, what can LinkedIn get away with? Because if we're successful too, then that's a good model for us, at least to use as, a spring pad.
Yeah, and I think, just like you have in the notes here, that's where people are talking about, are we in a bubble again? This is especially true for some of the mobile companies out there who are getting a ton of money. I ran into someone the other day who said, if you have a mobile app and like just a good idea, basically it's fairly simple, at least in certain areas, to get a few $1 million to get it up and running. And, while saying that, we should also mention our next news item in the headlines about Blippy's failure, because Leo and I had one of the founders from Blippy on the show when they launched, and it looks from the looks of their site in this article on TechCrunch that RIP Blippy, they are no more.
Yeah, this kind of came out of nowhere. Speaking of personal and work friends that overlap, my buddy Alexia, who writes over at TechCrunch, wrote this article. Speaking of personal and work friends that overlap, my buddy Alexia, who works at TechCrunch, wrote this article, and it came out of nowhere to me because I had profiled Blippy as well, Amber. It was actually when I was working at Current was when Blippy had launched, and I think it was in private beta for a while, and then it went public, and I had sort of put together a little video like, wow, social networking either has really jumped the shark or is just entering a whole new universe, because the idea, for anybody who's unfamiliar with Blippy, is that it was a way to share purchase info with your social network of friends. And so people, of course, were like, either that's crazy, there's security issues, and actually there were some security issues. Blippy had inadvertently leaked out some credit card info of some folks, which was an isolated incident, but still, it's the kind of thing that you definitely don't want happening if you're in the business of having people share monetary information. But my issue with it was always, it's just not polite to talk about money. Or at least that's how it's not comfortable for me to be like, hey, I just dropped $100 at this restaurant. Go and look at my Blippy profile and you'll see what else I paid for at Walgreens and this and that. It's like, it just didn't seem like information I was comfortable sharing. Not so much that other people didn't care, but it kind of sounds like the problem is that not enough people cared because they just didn't have a very big user base.
I agree. I mean, I think it's one of those things, and I signed up for Blippy when it first came out as well. And it was really funny because I had forgotten that I signed up. And then every once in a while, I would see someone commenting on something that I had purchased. And usually it was from like the iTunes music store where I bought a stupid song by a cheesy artist or something. And it was kind of humiliating that, I revealed my taste to other people. Nonetheless, the only thing that I'm confused about, so even though they're not doing, the service where you actually share what you've just bought, is it that they're doing the review site still? Because when you go to Blippy now, that it looks like it's still online, but they're just kind of focused on different products that you review. I don't know how much you know about this. It's sort of vague in the article itself.
Yeah, I had to read the TechCrunch article a couple times just to figure out what was going on. That's how far off my radar Blippy had been. I mean, this was the sort of service that it started out as, let's share our transactions with each other, and I could comment on that cheesy song that you bought, that you shared through iTunes or whatever. And they pivoted, as many companies do, to something somewhat different, where it's more of a review site where you would link up your Netflix account, for example, to Blippy, so that anytime I add something to my queue or I watch a movie on Netflix, that ends up getting shared on my profile. But also, maybe I review a movie, or I bought something on Etsy and I review an Etsy member, that sort of a thing, which is very different than what it originally started out as. It was more of just like, this is what I bought. It was focused on the money, not on the content and the quality of it so much. I mean, unless that I wanted to share it. But I had no idea. It sounds like at last check, when they were asked, they had 100,000 users, which obviously is a lot of people, but for a social networking service, that's not a big number of folks. I mean, Facebook's at 600 million, for example. So not really that much going on. And it's, I think really it just didn't appeal to enough folks. I mean, how can you scale a company like this where a large number of people are like, I can't get past this whole money part of this. Why would I want to share my transactions with other people? Does anyone care? I mean, it sounds like no, not enough people did. Some people did. But also, I think it was just one of those social networks that, what was the purpose of it really? What do people get out of it besides maybe a little bit of like, oh, I can't believe I admitted that I bought that song, like you were saying.
Yeah. So I mean, it seems like they've totally shifted their focus. So it is now all about reviews. And just on their homepage right now, you can see that someone has reviewed Pond's cold cream, and I think there's some comments attached to it as well. So just kind of shifted directions, and who knows how long they'll last. I mean, there's so many different review sites out there. So I don't know what their plans are for this new direction. Although the only thing I will say, when they were actually doing the sharing of financial information as far as your purchases, it did shock a lot of people. It was, either you loved it or hated it. And I'm not sure this will evoke such a strong reaction from either side in terms of this direction that they're going.
Yeah, exactly. It looks like more than anything, and I'm just trying to click around. I don't actually even want to sign in because there's nothing that I've done on Blippy recently. I think all I did was, the only thing I was comfortable sharing was my iTunes account, which just shows about 4 million iPad app purchases.
Oh, yeah,
because
yeah,
obviously
yeah.
I do that for work, so it's like I don't have a problem sharing that with you. But yeah, the site is live. It's not completely shut down. You're not getting a 404 error or anything when you're going. It just sounds like the team has moved on to other projects, greener pastures. I think a couple folks left, and there's a group of folks who are just working on other things. So it's kind of RIP Blippy. If for whatever reason your interest is piqued and you're not already a Blippy member, you can, I guess, get on the train while it's still going. But for the most part, I think its days are numbered. Maybe credit card transactions and dinner purchases and grocery dollar amounts just aren't
it's not
the
that
social
sexy.
Network recipe for good greatness.
Exactly.
All right, just wanted to remind everybody that we shoot the Social Hour live on Mondays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. I got it right this time, Amber. But if for whatever reason you can't join us live, that's okay, because you can see our show on demand whenever you like. Our website is twit.tv/TSH. That's for the Social Hour. And we're on episode 9 now. Gosh, we're almost in the double digits. So
amazing.
Things are going well for us. But of course, you can watch all of the shows that got us to this point. You can also subscribe to our shows if you can't watch live, or you prefer to watch it on your own time, and you're not going to remember to download the show every week. That's totally fine. You can subscribe to our audio or our video feeds as well. You can watch the show straight from our website if that's your bag. Go through iTunes or RSS feeds, whatever your preferred way to view the show is, or to listen to the show. That's cool. We're just glad to have you guys with us. Especially the live folks, because it's nice to have folks playing along on Mondays. By the way, Amber, based on our Punked episode from a couple weeks ago, we did get a few emails from people saying, by the way, we know that was somewhat weird and embarrassing for you guys, but as a live viewer who ended up seeing it, it was very funny. People seem to have kind of gotten a kick out of it, so I'm glad.
Oh, it was so funny.
I'm
And for
glad
people
to
who are
provide some
listening
humor.
in now and you don't know what we're talking about, basically, Sarah and I had a guest on, it was our last show or a couple shows ago, and we had called the guest. We thought he was the right person. One of the founders of Visually. Turned out we called some guy, random dude, who went through with the interview, pretended he was involved with Visually. He wasn't. So yes, we got punked in the Social Hour, and I believe that you can find that episode online and view it for your own pleasure, because I did have a chance to go back and look at it, and it is pretty hilarious. So we've had lots of interesting things happening on the show, Sarah. It's never a dull moment.
No, it certainly isn't. And if for whatever reason you find that video online, and maybe you'd like to create a blog about the experience of watching us get punked, or a blog about anything, or maybe you want to just put together a website highlighting some of the best blooper moments in social media, internet, television, whatever. You see what I'm getting at here. Or if you don't, it's because I want to talk about Squarespace. They're our first sponsor on the show, and Squarespace is the best way to create a very high-quality website or blog. So even if it's a ha-ha blog, or even if it's just about embedding some silly video, it's still going to look really good because you're using Squarespace. If you're not familiar with Squarespace, they have a very easy-to-use UI. So you can create a blog in minutes. You can use a number of their templates that they already have set up, or you can go custom. If you look at the examples page, it really gives you a good sense of how much Squarespace blogs can vary. In look and feel, how they operate. People use Squarespace blogs for all sorts of stuff, just to write, sort of like a diary type thing. Totally Rad Show, they're a show on revision 3. They use Squarespace to to host all their videos and blog posts in between shows and things like that. So it's a really good service for that sort of thing. I know Tom Merritt and Veronica Belmont use Squarespace for their Sword and Laser podcast, which is kind of like a book club type of a thing. So Squarespace is great for all sorts of different folks. People have a lot of really good stuff to say about Squarespace, myself included. I use Squarespace. I don't do a lot of regular blogging, but I definitely use Squarespace to provide people with a really good jumping off point for many of the other social networks that I do use on a daily basis. And it's really easy to like embed Twitter widgets and that sort of stuff, which of course is what I do, so that when you go to my blog, even if I don't have time to sit there and write this whole long thing, I'm still updating or seeming like I'm updating the content on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think that's one of the best things about Squarespace is just like you mentioned, the integration, and it makes it so easy to add those widgets and incorporate other social sites. And I wanted to mention this cool little service called the Hello Bar. I don't know if you've ever heard of them before. Maybe we talked about it on the show, but it allows you to add this really slender bar on the top of your webpage. A lot of musicians are doing it. So just, buy my latest album, and it integrates really nicely with Squarespace. It makes it really easy. So when you choose a platform like Squarespace, then you have all of these other services that play really nicely with Squarespace. And I think that's, for me, that's what makes a tool like this so valuable, is you don't have to go around messing with the code and trying to figure it out on your own. Who wants to do that there?
No, exactly. It's just like, life is hard enough. If you want to be creative and you're the sort of person who likes building things from scratch, Squarespace will be a great option for you. But if you're not, there's no reason to feel like, ooh, you're taking on too much, or setting up a blog is going to be this big hassle. It's going to take all weekend. It's really, it's as easy as you want to make it with Squarespace. And if you get into a jam or you just have a question about how things are working under the hood, they have great customer service. I always talk about their customer service because I've had so many questions over the last couple of years that I've worked with them, and they've always gotten back to me. They've been really helpful. The team is nice. They're based out in New York. I mean, they're just a good group of folks. And also, they have great analytics too. So if you're obsessed with who's coming to your blog and how did they find you, and maybe somebody tweeted a link to one of your posts that you're really proud of, and you just want to know that information, they have really good analytics. So when you're in your account, you have all that sort of information on how much traffic you're getting and where people are coming from. Again, Squarespace is the website, squarespace.com, and actually, if you want to try it out, you can for 14 days, 2 weeks. See if it's the right thing for you. Check it out, play around, create some templates, see how it's going. It's totally free. Doesn't cost a thing. You don't have to enter any credit card information. You can try it out for free. And the URL, so that they know that we sent you there, and to get 20% off of their very reasonable plans, if you decide to stay with Squarespace, is squarespace.com/social hour. So no just /social hour. All right, Amber.
Yeah. So you're so energetic, Sarah. You talk about me having energy. You're pretty bubbly yourself, I have to say.
No. Or rambly, depending on who you ask. But
no, it's all good. It's all good. So I wanted to mention this story. Toyota has teamed up with Salesforce.com to create a private social network for Toyota owners. So the idea behind this is that basically it's just a place where you can go if you own a Toyota car and you want to talk about conversations around the car, or even to just you can schedule maintenance, and basically it's just like a customer support kind of environment. And the reason I think this is so interesting is not necessarily because of the brands involved, but I just had this conversation with someone recently who was asking me if the future of social networks is closed social networks. Our Facebook and LinkedIn and all of those other social tools just too big, so people are going to really want to be attracted to these networks that are more specific to their kind of own personal needs. And this kind of falls into that category. So I don't know what your impression is, Sarah. Is there room for people to join these really kind of niche-oriented social networks, or do you think it's not so rad?
Well, my first impression was, who wants to join a social network about a Toyota? I mean, Toyota owners very often would have nothing in common with each other besides the fact that they both own Toyotas. But when you start getting into the whole idea that it would give you a way to have a more direct line into the dealership where you bought your Toyota if you have questions, or especially, Prius owners tend to be like more of, I guess, like rabid Prius fans maybe than like Camry owners, just because the Prius is still kind of a new hybrid technology and it's very popular type of thing. So I guess I can see where this could be helpful for some folks who are they're like passionate about their vehicle and they want to know, the latest updates, latest model information, and, if things go wrong, they want to be able to get a hold of somebody. But it does seem really specific. But the whole idea of the private social network, Amber, is interesting. I mean, apps like Path, for example. I mean, it's an iOS app that where you it's a private network where you can only add 50 friends, where you can only choose to share your information with 50 people. And you go like, well, what do you get out of that? Well, people that aren't, doing podcasts all day long. I mean, you and I have gotten really used to sharing, and, everything's very public. And some people aren't comfortable with that. Some people, that's just not the way that they want to live their life. They're not interested in sharing. It's the same people who lock down their Twitter accounts. Every once in a while, I come across somebody with a lock and I go like,
I know.
Gosh, you don't see that many of those anymore. But I mean, that's just the way it works for some people. They want to have control over who they're sharing information with. And I guess something like this Toyota project would be along those lines. It's, it's very specific. I guess, whoever you connected with on the network would be in the same boat and they really want to be there too.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess, you can really serve that community. I don't know. I kind of can see both sides of it. The one thing that I can say about why I think it would actually work is because I think so often with social networking, we're focused on these really big numbers. Like Facebook has 600 million users and these massive communities. But, size shouldn't necessarily matter. I mean, if you're a car company or any other brand and you bring the people in who love your brand and have already invested, like a car is a lot of money, and you bring them all to one place and you give them some type of content and information and a network that's really valuable to them, I think it would work. I know there's someone in the chat room who's mentioning that Mini's done this for a really long time. So it seems like it's one of these things, Sarah, where if they do it right, it can work. If they think people are just going to come to hang out because they own the same type of cars, it's not going to work. Right. So if they provide really great content and they really, give people access to information that's going to help them with their cars and make a really robust community that's focused on this type of content, then I think maybe it has a future. But they've got to be careful about how they kind of approach it.
Yeah, I think it would be probably a little silly for Toyota to think, oh, we're millions of people or anybody who owns a Toyota is just going to love this and really really get excited about our Toyota. It's called Toyota Friend, by the way. That's the name of the network. I think it's more just in a way a way for them to increase public relations, and make it more modern. And we're always talking about companies being accessible online and strategies. And this is just another one of those.
And let's not forget, last thing I'll say in this, but let's not forget that if you're a brand coming into an environment like Facebook, unfortunately you're playing, you have Facebook's rules and regulations, which they change all the time. Facebook owns a lot of your content. Facebook manages that whole process. So you can imagine for a big brand, if you're building up a massive community, I mean, there may be some hesitation in the months or years to come to give all of that over to a company where, not that you're saying you shouldn't trust Facebook, don't get me wrong. It's just that you don't really know, the direction that they're going. You're not part of their team that's kind of has the vision for the future. And because they do change their policies, I mean, even doing a contest on Facebook as a company is a really difficult thing because they change the rules so often. So it might be nice to control that experience, possibly.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of controlling the experience, two companies that I use pretty regularly apparently planning to partner up, and those two companies are Foursquare and Groupon. Foursquare, of course, is the location-based check-in service where you check into your favorite restaurant or you check into the TWiT cottage and let your friends know where physically you are. And Groupon, also based in Chicago, is it's sort of the online coupon service, which at least in the Chicago area, I know they recently. Not only can you go and participate in a daily deal based on where you live, which is how Groupon's service is set up, but at least in Chicago, they're now testing out, hey, I'm in this area. What are the Groupon deals around me? So it's not so much, let's it's going the other way, I guess, based on your location. Here's some of your choices rather than here's the daily deal. Does this apply to you? So it seems like this is a really good fit, doesn't it?
Yeah, it seems like a really great fit. I just wrote something last week about why I don't use Foursquare. I'm not really an active user on Foursquare. Location-based services. I know. They make me, I don't know, I guess because I travel alone a lot. I just don't want to check in all over the map. But nonetheless, I understand the value of them for deals and discounts and everything. But when I saw this headline, and it's just a rumor right now, but between Foursquare and Groupon, I thought, well, that actually makes sense. If I could, because I love Groupon. I don't want to say I'm addicted, but I'm on my way. And I think it's a really neat service. So if they had that integration between the two of them, maybe, you know, I'd be more inclined to participate, not necessarily to tell my friends where I am, but to participate so that I could take advantage of those great deals and you know, just even be able to hone that into my own neighborhood and those type of things.
So this article here at All Things D that talks about this also mentioned that Groupon did already announce a deal to distribute this exact information with Looped, which is another check-in service. A lot of people know about it, but it's smaller than Foursquare. Foursquare has about 9 million users. Looped is around 5, so it's smaller, but they do similar stuff. I like the idea. I mean, I use Foursquare all the time. There are many check-in services, and I've just decided to be loyal to Foursquare. I mean, I used Gowalla at first. MG is always checking me in on Facebook places, but I never actually do that myself because it's like I'm only going to take the time to use one network, and Foursquare is just the one that I've decided. I don't necessarily think it's better.
Yeah.
But I use it all the time, and I would like to know if I check in somewhere, as long as it wasn't overly invasive, have a little group on something that comes up and lets me know that there's a deal at the bakery, you know, half a block away type of a thing. I think I'd get some out of that.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. You know, I was just talking to someone, I think it was on Friday, who mentioned this new service to me, and I cannot remember the name of it. And I'm sorry, hopefully someone out there may know it and email us. But it is a service that it's kind of like a reverse Groupon. You know how Groupon comes up with the deals themselves that you can get? Instead of this, what it allows you to do is if you have a bunch of people in your own network, you can then go to a company and say, hey, I've got 80 people who are interested in getting 25% off at your restaurant. So you kind of propose that deal to them and they offer it back to you. So it's like the users are taking control of the group buying experience by getting a bunch of their friends together. And I thought that's really cool. Like I could find in Toronto, you know, I could probably find 50 people who wanted a deal at a certain, you know, tapas restaurant that we all love. And so if we could say to them, hey, you know, for every Friday for the next month, why don't you give us a deal? I have 50 people who are interested. And so it's shifting the control of services like that. And I thought that's kind of interesting. I'll try to find the name and mention it next week.
I love the idea of that because, yeah, I'm with you. It's like, I mean, I probably couldn't get 50 people together just any night of the week. But if you were to set up something with a pizza place where it's like, hey, we will take over this restaurant. I guarantee that you will sell however many pizzas, you know, in these 3 hours of time, and everybody gets $5 off or something like that. Yeah, it would be great. You know, as long as it's reasonable, I can see, especially smaller businesses, which I mean, Groupon, depending on the business, some businesses have really good success with Groupon and others don't because they end up getting an influx of folks and who aren't paying as much for whatever. But some, you know, just to be able to be exposed to a new group of people who are going to come back for more business if they like what you have to sell. Is why Groupon has been so successful.
But if you think about, like, you don't have to get, like, I could never get 50 people together necessarily in Toronto either to go to the same place. But if you think about it, because of your own social network, you don't have to all take advantage of that at the same time. So it would be more of a situation like if you went on Twitter right now there and said, okay, are there 50 people in San Francisco who want to try to get 50% off this cool new spa? Probably through networks of networks. And it's not like you're all going together, but you may be able to get that deal.
I got it.
So sorry if you kind of misunderstood, and that was probably the way I explained it. But you don't have to all go at the same time. You just like Groupon, you're all just taking advantage of that deal. You don't even have to really know the people. You just have to say, hey, come sign this, form. And we'll all take advantage of it. And it's just, I think it's interesting. And
that's a great idea. Yeah, because maybe a business is like, boy, I'd love to participate in this, but I don't know. I mean, I just don't know what our special would be. And, you know, they just aren't inspired to come up with anything. But if as a customer I was like, man, I sure would love it if I could create this deal for myself, and maybe however many people would sign up for that as well. So it's like anybody can just come up with the deal as long as you have enough people shaking on it, then you've got a deal.
Yeah, because like sometimes I get Groupon deals where I think that's really lame. You know, I'm really not into rock climbing or something like that, right? Or skydiving, whatever it is. So days go by and the deals don't interest me. But you know, you can imagine that, you know, based on interests of people that you know in your social networks, if you could come up with, you know, make your own kind of deal and present it to them, it's kind of fun. So I'll dig that up. somehow, if I can remember it by next week, although that seems like a world away, I'll try to figure out what that service is called, because it does exist.
Amber, you also, yeah, it sounds really cool. We'll definitely have to, we should, it'll be an experiment. Once we figure out what the name of the service is, as long as it's open, maybe we can experiment on the show and
yeah, that would be really fun.
We'll create
and try to
a
get
deal and have everybody jump on board. And
that's a really great idea. We should do more experiments
take
like that.
back the internet. Yeah. Speaking of the internet, you also had forwarded to me kind of a funny worded article.
I know.
It's 7 Twitter rules you must ignore. But then really it's just myths about Twitter that aren't true.
True. Yeah, and I was kind of attracted to the headline too, Sarah, so I'm glad that you felt the same way. It was one of the, you're always reading about Twitter tips that you should follow, and this is kind of Twitter tips that you should ignore. I don't think there's anything here that is really too surprising, but I thought it would be a good article to send people who are new to Twitter, because I can't tell you the number of conversations I have with people who say things like, oh, Twitter isn't really for business. And this is, they say this is kind of myth number 2, that people think that Twitter isn't for business, or you can't do any type of customer support there. So it would be a good educational article. It's available on Tech Vibes, and I know we'll put it in the show notes as well. So it's kind of just a handy and different way to look at some of the rules on Twitter.
I think some of this stuff too is, even though, I mean, at least for us, and I know a lot of folks who watch the Social Hour are like, duh. I mean, obviously, Twitter and Facebook aren't the same, and Twitter can be very good for businesses. But again, for folks who are at least new to the service, or still just kind of trying to figure out how it works for them, it's good. Some of the stuff is just a good reminder of the fact that it doesn't have to be just about personal stuff. I have a few of my friends, again, who are like more personal friends and aren't really in the same line of work as me, who are on Facebook, but they're not on Twitter. They haven't decided that it's necessary. And they also do mention, and this is something that this article addresses also, is that the syntax is confusing. I think that at first, I mean, you and I know it's like, hey, once you figure out the RT means retweet, £sign in front of something is a hashtag, which is either a helpful hashtag or a funny hashtag, or you can, it's pretty easy to, get into the swing of things and feel like you're in on the fun. But it can be, it looks like just a bunch of gobbledygook to some folks who are, especially seeing my tweets that go over to Facebook, and it's like I'm referencing something and it just doesn't translate that well. So this is, it's kind of like giving folks a little bit more of a kick. Like, Twitter can be really helpful for you. Yeah, there are some myths that it's hard to compose something in 140 characters or less, but it's like, it's really not that hard. And link shortening services, it's like, you'd be surprised what you could say.
I totally agree. And one thing in this list I thought was really a valid point is that myth number 6, the more the followers, the greater the returns. And I think, just like on what we just talked about with different social networks, just because you have a lot of followers, it doesn't necessarily really translate into anything. I mean, you could be a small business with 100 followers, but if they all come in every day, then that's fantastic for your company, right? Yeah. So we sometimes get into this position where we're always thinking, oh, it's all about followers, right? But for a lot of businesses, you don't have to have 500,000 followers. You can have a couple thousand, and it's still pretty significant.
Yeah, I agree. And I've definitely found that for myself. And I think I've mentioned on the show before, it's like, I can, especially if I use something like Bitly, where I can see how many people clicked through on a link that I shared. I have many more followers than I had when I first signed up for Twitter, but I plateaued at the number of people who are going to click anything that I share a long time ago. I mean, my Twitter followers keep kind of crawling up. I mean, it's not like I'm having a exponential growth or anything, but it's like I can maybe get 1,000 people at the most to click on something. I mean, out of like almost 50,000. It's just the engagement is not representative of the follower number you have. And I think that applies to social networks in general. I mean, who knows who's following us? It's marketing people who are maybe just checking in every once in a while, or there's some dummy accounts, or just people who just aren't on Twitter engaged the way that you and I are. So
yeah, exactly. And I think it depends. Like, sometimes I post something that I think is stupid, and then all of a sudden people will get really involved in the conversation. So I can't predict anything on Twitter.
I know. Yeah, I think some of my best success stories are really stupid videos that I just sent on a whim. And I get a flood of responses like, "Ha ha, this is so funny! You really made my day," kind of thing. And it's like, didn't even try. So
Yeah,
just
I know.
goes
It's
to show
funny.
you what people are into. Want to take another quick break to thank Netflix. You know Netflix. You love Netflix, but for any reason you're not using it, you need to start because they are the best way to watch movies at home, on the go, via your laptop or your iPad or your Wii or your Xbox 360 or your PS3. Works again on the PS3. Netflix is awesome. We love them. I was browsing the selection of new releases on Netflix, Amber, stuff that I can instantly stream, which is, by the way, anybody who's really truly not familiar with Netflix, this is the service where you can get DVDs delivered to your mailbox, or you can instantly stream movies. There's a movie that I saw a couple months ago. Let's see if I can find it here again. Yes, it's called All Good Things. I went and saw it in the theater, and I did not like this movie. I thought it was terrible. However, since then, you talk about movies that you either liked or didn't like, and I've got a lot of friends who are like, what's wrong with you, Sarah? That was a really good movie. Ryan Gosling, he's awesome, kind of a thing. So it just goes to show you that, the movies that people like and don't like vary wildly, and just because I don't like something doesn't mean that it wasn't someone else's favorite movie. But this is a movie that you can instantly stream on Netflix, and this is the kind of thing where it's like, I can't tell you that you'll like it. I'm just not sure, but you can stream it instantly. It's like you got a couple hours to kill. It's perfect. Netflix is perfect for that. And if for whatever reason, maybe you put it in your queue, which is how Netflix works. It's like you sign up. Which is very easy. And by the way, you can sign up and get a month of movies for free. So if you're like, I'm pretty sure that I'm going to agree with Sarah and hate All Good Things, you still won't have to pay anything in order to watch it. You can
That's always good.
Yeah, you can get through it in your first month. So that's very helpful. And if you want to, a month of free movies, it's like I'm giving you gold here. It's like, why wouldn't you want to do that? If you do want to sign up and check out Netflix, Amber, by the way, have you seen All Good Things?
I have not seen it.
I don't know if you would like it. I don't even know. Well, I won't give it away for anybody who's like now actually very interested in seeing this movie.
I want to watch it now, though. See, when someone doesn't like something, it almost attracts you more, Sarah.
Yeah, because you want to either be like, wasn't it awful? Let's talk about the scene we hated the most. Or you can be like, what is your problem? It was really, really good and entertaining. It's a weird movie, I'll tell you that. But you can try your 1 month free trial right now. And we want you to go to netflix.com/twit. That way, the Netflix folks will say, Twit sent you here. We love Twit. And our match made in heaven as far as sponsorships can continue. Netflix.com/twit. And we thank them very much for sponsoring this episode of The Social Hour. Netflix, you're great. Keep on keeping on. So
right.
should we go into our mailbox? And you know what? Before we go into our emails, we actually had gotten a tweet. Ryan Azawa, who's AKA Hawaii on Twitter, which is like the greatest Twitter handle ever. He's got quite a few followers as well, and he's really engaged on Twitter. Asked us, or at AskTwit, and the tweet eventually made its way into my stream. Has Namesake started spreading a twit yet? It's like hotcakes out here, and by out here, I assume he means Hawaii. And had you heard of Namesake, Amber?
You know what? I just got an invite from a friend of mine, Jay, who is really tuned into the whole social media scene and on a business front and personal front. And I thought, okay, I got to watch out for this. And it was so funny when I saw this tweet. I thought, okay, this is just the beginning. So I have heard of it. I don't know a ton about it, but went to their website to check them out and have yet to sign up. But I will give it a whirl.
Well, I signed up today. I thought, you know what? I want to talk. I want to let Ryan know if I like the service or not. And I did a little research, and it turns out that Namesake. Ooh, Dana just started following me. I bet a lot of you Twit folks know Dana. She is talk about somebody who's engaged online, man. Dana doesn't miss a beat. Namesake was a TechCrunch Disrupt winner of some kind, which they're doing a TechCrunch Disrupt right now in New York. But this was back in September, so I guess it was the San Francisco conference. But that's where they got a bunch of kind of initial buzz. The idea of it, if I could, I know it's always annoying when people say, it's the Twitter for blah, blah, blah. But this really does seem to me like a hybrid of Twitter and Quora. Quora, of course, is kind of like the question and answer site where people ask questions and you get a variety of answers. But Namesake seems to be more based around folks who have certain who are good at certain things. So for example, when I signed up this morning, it was like, what are some keywords that describe what you're good at? So I wrote, writing, twit, producing, cats, kind of thing. Stuff that I feel like I could call myself an expert in, type of a thing. And then once I set up my profile, I'll go to my profile right here. Once I set up my profile and I signed in with Facebook, so it just easily pulled this really outdated profile picture from Facebook. So I added in some of my keywords here, and then folks could endorse me. So let's say I'm automatically following some folks that I'm friends with on Facebook because I used Facebook Connect when I signed up. And a few people are following me already. Dana and I think the other two are just like the founders, where they follow you by default because I'm new. But I would, add some stuff about what I'm passionate about in my bio area. And then let's say someone like Dana knows me and thinks, I really want to endorse that Sarah is good, at social networking, that kind of a thing. So it's like you almost get community points from other Namesake users, so that when I start participating and answering questions based on how good or not good I am at certain things, gives me more clout, I guess.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so for example, you look at a conversation here. This is someone named RJ who just wrote a little like, hello, Namesake, I'm new here, kind of a thing. This was 19 minutes ago. So this is all kind of like I'm looking at a real-time stream. And she's gotten 10 comments so far. So it's like, okay, well, what's going on here? Who's this person? What's so special about this? And these are just folks kind of saying like, hi, welcome to Namesake, kind of a thing. But I also, earlier this morning when I was just playing around on the site, folks were saying, they were asking about all sorts of things. I mean, hey, I'm just making up this question, but like, hey, if for any social experts out there, what's the best service for me to get the word out about my website, kind of a thing? That would be the sort of question that folks on Namesake could then be like, I've got a really good answer, or I just went through this myself, kind of thing. And so it's a community effort, but it's not where how Twitter is kind of, you could talk about anything, and Twitter's sort of beautiful and all over the place because of that. Yeah. Namesake is much more focused on specific conversation topics.
Okay, it's interesting. I actually just pulled a Leo, Sarah, and signed up while you were chatting about it, just to see if I could figure out, how, in just a couple of minutes, how it works. And it sounds interesting. It's a really nice looking site, I will say that. Just the whole interface is nice. And from not really knowing how to use something, it's pretty simple to figure out how to follow people. I mean, if you're used to that behavior on other social sites, it seems like a cinch.
Yeah,
so
I was surprised at how these kinds of sites are like, I mean, it's all about the community. I mean, you wouldn't get anything out of Namesake if you weren't getting a lot of interesting, relevant, helpful answers to questions that you were posing, or being able to contribute to other folks' queries. But I noticed that, I mean, you look at, especially just kind of in the news river on the front page, there is a lot of engagement. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of comments. I'm seeing a lot of folks participating in conversations. So that gives me a good feeling about the community. It's like, it doesn't have to be the biggest community in the world as long as it's an active one.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it seems like you always have a few people who kind of invite you to something like this, and then you realize like, okay, it possibly has potential. And it's always the kind of the test of time, right? In 2 or 3 months, you're still using it, or do you even remember the name?
Yeah. Well, and
I think this will fall
it's
into
like
that
talking about movies. When Ryan Ozawa was like, "Hey, Namesake, it's big in Hawaii. What does TWiT think about it?" I was like, "Namesake? It's not the name of a movie," which it is. Has nothing to do with the site, but it threw me for a loop for a minute, where I was like, I don't know if I've heard of the site or if I'm just confused because it's a word that I've heard of before, because there are just so many sites. So Ryan, Amber and I are becoming familiar with Namesake. It definitely has potential. Looks cool. Gotta get in there and be active for a while to make a better assessment, but first impression seems pretty awesome. Amber, we also got an email from Justin Leon, who said, you guys discussed Tumblr back in episode 5. I've been a Tumblr user for more than 2 years, but I feel out of place there in comparison to Twitter and Facebook. A lot of people who use Tumblr are not only younger, and I'm not sure how Justin knows this, but he says most of them are in the 14 to 22 age range. Maybe that is a statistic. But they use it as a secretive social network. Since Twitter and Facebook have made the critical mass, everyone, including their parents, are using it, and they treat Tumblr as a way to express themselves. Sometimes younger people use it in a way to become too revealing. They don't realize what they say or do can hurt them down the road. I just feel a bit out of place there since I'm older, and I wanted to let you know you aren't alone. So thanks, Justin.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if, I think he's referring to me saying, I started following all these people on Tumblr.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if it's like, some of them are people that I know and some are just random people, and I'm not sure that I'm getting the best experience for myself. No one specifically is a bad Tumblr user, but just, it's like it's all kind of what is coming in. But I don't think that I've ever felt like Tumblr skewed too young. What about you?
I don't think so, but it's really funny, his point of how a lot of younger people are using it just as more of a private place. I've actually heard that a couple of times before. So it's interesting you see how younger people, when I think of kind of teenagers, it's interesting to watch them kind of use social networks and how they'll sort of, jump from one to another, and they'll sort of get around any, public facing issues. Like even on Facebook, there was a period when a lot of teenagers were using Facebook, and they would erase their status updates, a few minutes after they posted it, just to kind of not have any tracks or anything like that. So it's fun to watch that age group actually use these networks because they're just so smart and so kind of swift as they kind of move from one to another. So yeah, I have heard that before.
But even that, I didn't realize that people were posting Facebook status updates and then erasing them so that mom and dad don't see. What if their friends aren't looking right at that moment? Then they won't see it either. Tumblr is almost less of that type of, the whole idea is it's pretty much just blogging. There's just a nice social network element built into Tumblr, and a little bit more of a focus on shorter format. It's really good for people who don't necessarily want to write a whole novel, but want to be posting and sharing regularly. They also have really nice themes as well, and you can embed videos and things like that.
It's faster. It's just, blogging is so cumbersome for anyone who's ever written a blog, and you feel like you have to update it on a regular basis, and people just after a few months they kind of ignore it. I think Tumblr is just much more manageable.
Yeah. I like Tumblr a lot. I'm like I said, I don't use it as much as sometimes I think I should, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I lurk on Tumblr more than I post. Yeah. I post every once in a while, but for the most part, I'm just reading. I'm reading my dashboard. It's like Tumblr's way of saying newsfeed, and sometimes I'm just like, this. I just read a bunch of random stuff. I'm kind of over Tumblr for a little while, type of a thing. But I don't think I'm following anybody who's much younger than me. So it's interesting though. It's interesting why folks say this social network is irking me, or somehow I feel like it's not clicking perfectly for me. And here's the specific reason that I have, which isn't always the same reason that you or I would have. So it just goes to show that people like things for all sorts of different reasons.
Exactly. Yeah, I think Tumblr is just great, just how instant it is and how simple it is, and it makes it really possible for you to actually keep up to date with a blog without feeling pressure, right?
Yeah.
To write a ton of content. So this is a really interesting email that we got from about.me/Tommy C, asking a question that, Sarah, you probably ask yourself, as do I. Mm-hmm. Between Flickr and Twitter and Facebook, I also have on my iPhone Pick Please, Instagram, Foursquare, and Color. Is there such a thing as too much social? I like to share my pictures, but not everyone can see my Facebook account. I have friends that use Instagram, but not Pick Please. Some follow me on Twitter, but not Foursquare. Can having too many social apps be a bad thing? I think if you were asking this question, it might be in the sense that sometimes it's just too much to keep up with all them. I have this issue on a regular basis, and I've sort of just committed to Twitter and Facebook right now, and those are kind of my go-to tools, and I sort of dabble in everything else. What about you, Sarah?
Well, I agree with you that that if you're starting to feel like there are too many social networks, then you're probably getting burned out by using too many. By the way, is Pick Please available for iPhone? Because it didn't used to be.
I'm not
He
sure.
said on
Actually.
iPhone he has Pick Please and Instagram, because I know there are, at least for Android folks, a lot of people use Pick Please and complain that Instagram is not available for Android yet, but maybe Pick Please is iPhone capable as well, in which case I should download that app. I love, obviously, social networks, so I don't really feel like having too many is bad for me, but then we also do this for a living, so it's like, it's not only a hobby, but it's also a job, because I like to research how people use social networks differently. You know, it's like, what's the general vibe on Facebook? Like you said, Facebook and Twitter, those are my big guns too, but I use them very differently. I mean, they're just not the same. They're not really competitors. I mean, you could argue that they are, but they're just very different services. And I guess, you know, it's, if you have a lot of folks who have added you as a friend on Pick Please, and you're trying to find a reason why to use something like Instagram, these are both photo sharing app services, then maybe you don't need to use Instagram. I mean, maybe it's like you're just trying to convince yourself that it's something that you should be a part of. And if your heart isn't into it, then you know, you shouldn't feel pressure to have to join a bunch of services that you're not into. But Amber, I don't know about you. I notice more and more that I almost don't pay that much attention to the way that I'm sharing with people. I mean, I have so many friends on so many different networks that it's like, as long as I just get the message across to somebody, it's like, I don't always even, you know, it's like, did I just SMS somebody or did I send them a message on Beluga? As long as they got it, it's fine, you know, especially in the world of apps.
It's almost like the situation right now. It's sort of like the right tool for the right job, right? And there's certain things like, you know, sometimes I know that a photo that I'm taking really isn't that great of a photo, and I'm keen to use Instagram to add filters to make it look better. And so that's how I use a lot of those tools. It just depends on, you know, kind of the purpose of what I'm trying to get across. I have recently, I still do push everything from Twitter to Facebook when I'm posting, but recently I've started to do just posts that will be just for kind of the Facebook community. And the reason I've done that is people have complained just about, you know, like we talked about before, just some of the language that Twitter uses, some of the @ signs and all the symbols, it just doesn't translate on Facebook. So I do recognize that that is a different community. So I'm trying, you know, my best to kind of do different things in different communities. But I agree with you. Depending on what you're trying to get across, just whatever tool is sort of best.
Yeah, very much so. So, what was his name? His name was Thomas. So Thomas, I think you're the only one who can really answer this for yourself. If you feel like there's just too many social networks and it's not fun or useful or a combination of the two, then yeah, I mean, maybe cut out the stuff that you don't need. Because really, I mean, it's like you got to be getting something out of it. And I agree that Thomas did mention color as something where he's like, what is the point of this? Thomas, you're not alone. So a lot of folks, even people who are in the tech scene, as we are asking me on a regular basis, are you still using color? Is anyone using color? People definitely are, but it seems to confuse some folks. Before we get to our rad or fad segment, want to remind everybody that you can get a hold of us. We're social folks. We want to hear from you. We want this to be a conversation. You can get a hold of us a variety of different ways. You can email us at thesocialhour@twit.tv. tsh@twit.tv will get to us as well. So, you know, whether or not you're into brevity, we don't care. You can leave us a voicemail. 2626-SOCIAL is the number. It's Google Voice number. It'll be free from some small town somewhere. I'm not exactly sure what that number turns into. But again, 2626-SOCIAL. Or you can record a video. We got a couple of videos actually over the last week.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I know. They one ended up not playing for me. I'm not really sure why. I'll have to go back and see if maybe we can get that video working for next week. And one was really long. So just keep in mind that we try to keep the show to an hour, obviously, the social hour. So something that's like 30 seconds is a really good magic time. 30 seconds or less. Question, comment, anything like that. It's great to hear from you. Great to see you. And we just really appreciate all the good feedback that we're getting so far. And Amber picked her Rad or Fad segment this week. But before we get to that, just want to quickly thank Audible.com. They're our third sponsor. I had to actually look at my fingers to see if I was holding up 3 fingers. Audible.com, if you're not familiar with them, they are the provider of audiobooks with over 75,000 titles. Literature, fiction, nonfiction, even some periodicals. Audible has they have so much content, it is unbelievable. And if you're not really familiar with Audible, what's really cool is that if you sign up now, you get your first audiobook free. So it's like, I mean, it's like going into the library, but you don't ever have to bring the book back. It's just yours. And audiobooks are great because they give you a different experience than reading. It's not necessarily better or worse. It's just different. There are so many instances where we're on the go, we're busy folks, and you don't necessarily have time to sit and read a book or a Kindle or anything of that. But if you had to make dinner, or if you were at the gym or you were commuting, you could be listening to a book being read to you, which is a really cool experience. Kind of engages your imagination in different ways. You could be doing that while getting other stuff done that you have to do anyway. For example, Bossy Pants by Tina Fey, which I still haven't listened to, but I have heard it is awesome, especially as an audiobook because Tina Fey narrates it. So that's awesome. It's not just anybody reading the book to you, it's Tina. So if you're a fan, it's good stuff.
Even just going into Audible and looking at the cover art for that book, which I haven't paid attention to that before, but it's very disturbing. I've heard great things about the book before, but as you can see, it's her with man arms.
With man hands. Oh my gosh, I never noticed that before.
Yeah.
Here, let me zoom in for our video folks. Oh, that is gross. Oh, that's awful. Why is it like that?
It's just wrong.
It's just Tina, right? She's just being funny.
Yeah, I mean, it's intriguing, right? So it's a good pick for this week because once you see that on audible.com, you'll just have to take a listen because you'll be wondering what she's talking about and why she has a black top hat on and man arms.
Exactly. Yeah, it's good stuff. I mean, Audible is truly, I mean, go to Audible, just start, try to stump them. You know, I mean, try to enter a book that they don't have. I mean, you could probably do that if you really tried, but they've got everything. And a variety of folks, you know, they work with certain people who are they really read books in a beautiful way. So you start seeing narrators. Leo has his favorite narrators that he gets really excited about where he's like, oh, I love this guy. Now I really want to buy this book. But if you're just like, well, maybe this is a good thing for me, I'll try it out. Get a free book and then and see if you like Audible, and if you do, then it's the service for you. audiblepodcast.com/social hour is the way to get that free book and let them know that you came through us. Again, audiblepodcast.com/social hour. And we thank Audible for being our sponsor. I'm going to buy this book, Bossy Pants. While I'm doing that, well, actually, I can't really do that and do the show at the same time. But Amber, what is our rad or fad segment today?
Okay, so I don't know if you've ever heard of a service called Visibly. They have now launched, it's kind of like an app, although you can use it online as well, called Sneak Peek that allows you to really measure Twitter influence. So basically when you go to Sneak Peek, and this is a light version, you can put anyone's Twitter name into the blank search box. You click on go, then it will load up this graph so you can see some of the most popular tweets, how many people have retweeted them and shared their information, and a bunch of other stats to basically determine influence. Now, you're limited to the amount of information that you can see without signing up. Once you do sign up, then you have the option to get more information. I think even kind of some real-time stats as well. So it's kind of an interesting service. The reason that I put it in rad or fad is because it reminds me a lot of Clout. If you're familiar with Clout, and everybody has their Clout score and trying to determine influence. And I just feel sometimes with Clout, not that it drives me crazy, but I feel like it's not necessary. What does it mean? You know, like my Clout score, I haven't even looked forever, but let's say it's in the 60s or something like that, and someone else is in like the 70s, and I don't know, like measuring influence like this, it just seems weird to me because I feel like the reason you would want to measure influence is if you're a brand and you want to hire someone maybe to do some blogging or something for you. But really, their influence isn't just how many times they've been retweeted, but maybe how prominent they are in a specific community, right? Yeah. And it's hard to measure that kind of stuff. So I just hope that people don't just use these things to determine, you know, the usefulness of you know, access to someone on Twitter and other sites.
I agree that it can sometimes be a little bit dangerous to look at statistics and be like, wow, this tweet really spiked as far as, you know, again, like click-through rates or people being engaged, and that influencing you in a way that motivates you to say things a certain way or to share certain things because you get more out of it rather than being yourself. I think, some people are more susceptible to that than others. And again, I mean, if you're tweeting for business purposes, then these are the sorts of stats that would really be helpful to you. I mean, I just added in my username. And yeah, you're right, Amber. I can look at my 2-week, but if I wanted to see real-time results or tweet information over 30 days, I would have to register. But they kind of just give us the 14 days just to get an idea of how it works. And the 2 tweets that are coming up on the radar, one is from May 11th when I sent a note to Patrick Norton because I saw this T-shirt that on Etsy that I thought he would get a kick out of. A lot of people clicked on that. And then yesterday, I soundtracked a song by Bjork, which is funny because I know a bunch of people who are stuck in Iceland right now. So I was like, it's a Bjork song at the wine bar. Ha, 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 how funny. And 340 people clicked on it. So, I mean, not that many. But I'm sort of like a little perplexed. Those certainly weren't the 2 tweets that I necessarily thought were the most important. But that's what's showing up here. So it's like, what is it? Does it matter? I mean, it's interesting information, but it doesn't really make me change any of my habits, and I'm not sure that the information I got is really helpful because I don't feel like I was taught anything.
Yeah, and I guess that's the thing. It's like I would almost put this in the fad category. And, at first it seems kind of rad, like, oh, isn't it neat? You can go in and find people's influence, but it's just not accurate. Like you said, you tweeted to a friend about a T-shirt. Does that make you really more influential for a certain company? Like, if it's not relevant, it's not relevant,
if anything,
right?
that was almost like a really good example of a tweet that was meant for one person.
And I thought of this because I was just reading a magazine or article recently about a friend of mine who was profiled in this magazine in Canada, and they talked about her clout score, and then they compared her to me and said, basically she's hovering around the same clout score as Amber MacArthur. And I was like, are we in high school? Like, it felt so, I don't know. There's something about it that I think is very faddish. So. Yeah,
I think the competition factor of stuff like Visibly, which is VISIBLI, so it's Visibly, but spelled in a different way. I think the competition. Some people just like that sort of thing. It helps drive them, keep them interested, and it's kind of a game. And I know a lot of people who kind of get off on this type of a thing. What you were describing to me, sort of being compared to someone else based on social network radar, sometimes makes me feel uncomfortable. I mean, we all want to be successful and to be putting out stuff that people are interested in and that kind of thing. But I think for the most part, you start getting away from really what's useful about social networking when you worry too much about who you may have reached. I mean, if you've reached a lot of folks, you'll probably get the feedback that you tweeted about initially anyway. And I don't know if knowing that a lot of people clicked on the T-shirt that I shared with Patrick Norton, I mean, I'm glad they did, but if no one clicked on it, as long as he did, that was all I really cared about.
Yeah. So basically just, I would say my advice to people would just be that take these things kind of with a grain of salt. It's good to kind of gauge if you are in business and you want to figure out if someone has some influence, if people are listening to them. But, there's other stuff that I think you should look at as well. Right. So, Twitter is a great community, but there are other social networks and people have plenty of influence on, beyond the Twitters of the world.
So what do you think? Is it rad or is it fad?
I think it's a fad. I think this whole thing of like clout and measuring influence like this, I think it's a very difficult thing to do, and I think we still have to use common sense at the end of the day. So I think it's very faddish.
Yeah, me too. No problem with it, but it's like I think stuff like this will probably wane in popularity once people realize that it's like those metrics aren't necessarily a measure of doing well. And we've talked about some really good examples of why. Well, Visibly, you're a fad, but your site is nice and it's kind of interesting. It's worth checking out.
Exactly, and there's some stats that are useful. I just think I wouldn't just depend entirely on that.
Well, Amber, we've come to the end of the social hour. I think we kept it to about an hour, so we're getting better at this.
I can't believe it. It's awesome. Yeah. So a good solid hour, Sarah. It goes to show you there's a lot to talk about. And I think on our next show, just to tease it a little bit, we're going to have a woman who has created a documentary all about Twitter join us from Asia. So that should be kind of fun to tune into that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait to ask her, why would you want to do a documentary about Twitter? But yeah, I mean, she sounds like a really interesting woman. So we'll get the behind the scenes story of why she decided to dedicate so much time and effort to this project, and got a lot of people to participate too.
Yep, she sure did.
But we'll talk about that more. And by the way, we're shooting that show this coming Friday, rather than next Monday when we usually shoot the show. For anybody who wants to join us live, that's because, at least in the US, it's Memorial Day next Monday, and the TWiT offices will be closed. Nobody will be here. So some of our shows will just be dark that Monday, but we wanted to not be dark on the social hour. So we'll be taping that show on Friday at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern.
So you're starting you're starting to celebrate Memorial Day. I can't imagine a better way than watching us live that afternoon.
Absolutely, kick off the long weekend with us. All right, Amber, take care. See you on Friday. Everybody else, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on the Social Hour.
See you later.